2026, providing continuous food from early spring through late fall, with storage crops lasting through winter into 2027. Before we dive into the 20 crops, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This channel is about real food production, not decorative gardening. And drop a comment telling me where you're located and what your biggest gardening challenge is. I read every comment. All right, let's start with crop number 1. Starting at number 1, we have potatoes, and this is non-negotiable for food security. Potatoes produce more calories per square foot than almost any other crop. One 4-by-8-foot bed can produce 100 pounds of potatoes, enough to feed one person for several months. Why January? In mild climates, plant potatoes in January for spring harvest. In cold climates, start planting your potato order now because seed potatoes sell out by March. Varieties matter. Choose a mix of early, mid, and late season varieties. Early varieties like Yukon Gold harvest in 70 to 90 days. Late varieties like Kennebec and Russet Burbank take 110 to 130 days but store for months. How much to plant? For a family of 4, plant at least 40 pounds of seed potatoes. This produces approximately 400 to 600 pounds of harvested potatoes, enough for substantial caloric intake throughout the year. Planting method. Use the trench method or tower method. Plant seed potatoes 4 to 6 inches deep, 12 inches apart. As plants grow, hill soil around them to encourage more tuber formation. Storage. Cure potatoes after harvest by keeping them in darkness at 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit for 2 weeks. Then store in a cool, dark, well-ventilated place. Properly stored potatoes last 4 to 6 months. Potatoes are carbohydrates, essential for energy and calories. They're filling, versatile, and productive. This is a foundational crop for feeding a family. Crop number 2. Winter squash. At number 2, we have winter squash, including butternut, acorn, delicata, and Hubbard varieties. Winter squash stores for 6 to 12 months, providing calories and nutrition well into 2027. Why January? Start seeds indoors in January in cold climates. In zones 9 to 10, direct seed outdoors in late January for early summer harvest. Calorie density. Winter squash provides substantial calories, 100 to 150 calories per pound. One plant produces 10 to 30 pounds depending on variety. How much to plant? For a family of 4, plant 10 to 15 winter squash plants of various varieties. This produces 150 to 300 pounds of storage squash. Crop number 3. Dried beans. Number 3 is dried beans, and this is your protein storage crop. Beans provide protein, fiber, and calories that store for years. Why January? Plan your bean varieties now. In mild climates, plant bush beans in late January. In cold climates, start ordering seeds because many heirloom varieties sell out. Protein content. Dried beans provide 15 to 20% protein. 1 pound of dried beans contains as much protein as 2 to 3 pounds of meat. How much to plant? For a family of 4, plant enough beans to harvest 50 to 100 pounds of dried beans. This requires approximately 200 to 300 row feet planted successively throughout the season. Dried beans stored in airtight containers last 2 to 3 years, longer in the freezer. Beans are nitrogen-fixing, meaning they improve soil while producing food. They're essential for complete nutrition and protein. At number 4, we have onions, a staple ingredient that stores for months and is used in countless dishes. Why January? Plant onion sets or transplants in January in zones 7 to 10. In cold climates, start onion seeds indoors now for transplanting in March-April. Day length matters. Choose varieties matched to your latitude. Short day onions for the south, long day for the north, intermediate for the middle. Storage varieties. Plant storage varieties like Copra, Patterson, and Red Wing that cure and store for 6 to 8 months. Planting. Space onions 4 to 6 inches apart in rows or blocks. They need full sun and consistent moisture until bulbing begins. How much to plant? For a family of 4, plant 100 to 200 onion sets or transplants. This produces 50 to 100 pounds of storage onions, enough for daily cooking throughout the year. Harvest and storage. Harvest when tops fall over. Cure in warm, dry conditions for 2 to 3 weeks until outer skins are papery. Store in mesh bags in cool, dry, dark locations. Onions are foundational ingredients. Having a year's supply means never buying onions again. Number 5 is garlic. Typically planted in fall, but essential to mention for January planting because you'll harvest in summer 2026 and need to plan for fall 2026 planting. Why January planting? Garlic planted in October-November 2025 will be ready to harvest June-July 2026. Use January to plan your garlic expansion for fall 2026. Multiplication factor. Each clove planted produces one bulb with 8 to 12 cloves. This means a 10x return on investment. Planting for 2026 harvest. If you planted garlic in fall 2025, you're already set. If not, plan to plant heavily in October 2026 using this January to source quality seed garlic. How much to plant? For a family of 4, plant 2 to 3 pounds of seed garlic. This produces 15 to 30 pounds of harvested garlic, enough for daily cooking and medicinal use. Storage. Properly cured garlic stores 6 to 9 months. Soft-neck varieties store longer than hard-neck. Garlic is both food and medicine, supporting immune function and adding flavor. It's essential for food sovereignty. At number 6, we have tomatoes specifically for canning and preserving, not just fresh eating. Why January? Start tomato seeds indoors in January for transplanting in March-April. This gives you early maturity and extended harvest season. Paste varieties. Focus on paste tomatoes like Roma, San Marzano, and Amish paste. These have less water content and more flesh, perfect for sauce, paste, and canning. Determinate versus indeterminate. For processing, plant determinate varieties that ripen all at once, making canning efficient. For fresh eating, plant indeterminate for continuous harvest. Planting. Space plants 24 to 36 inches apart. Plant to plant in succession for continuous ripening throughout summer and fall. How much to plant? For a family of 4 to have enough tomato products for a year, you need approximately 200 to 300 pounds of tomatoes. This requires 20 to 30 paste tomato plants. Preservation. Can tomato sauce, paste, salsa, and whole tomatoes. Freeze tomato puree. Dehydrate sliced tomatoes for sun-dried tomatoes. Tomatoes preserved properly provide vitamin C and flavor throughout winter when fresh produce is scarce. Part 4, we are focusing on 3 powerhouse crops: dried sweet corn, carrots, and cabbage. These are workhorse crops that provide calories, storage life, and real nutrition. Let's get straight into it. At number 7, we have sweet corn grown specifically for drying and long-term storage. Most people think of corn only as a fresh summer vegetable. But when you allow sweet corn to fully mature and dry on the stalk, it becomes one of the most valuable calorie crops you can produce at home. Dried sweet corn can be ground into cornmeal, used for polenta, added to soups, stews, and casseroles, or rehydrated as whole kernels. It becomes real survival food. Why January? Because serious growers plan their corn layout early. In warm regions, you can even begin your first corn planting in late January. In colder climates, January is the month to map out your succession planting schedule so you can stagger harvests and maximize yield across the growing season. Corn needs full sun, nitrogen-rich soil, and block planting rather than single rows. Plant in groups so wind pollination is effective. Think 4x4 blocks instead of one long strip. How much should you plant? For a family of 4 wanting meaningful food storage, you should aim for at least 200 to 300 corn plants over the season. That sounds like a lot. But remember, you are growing calories, not garnish. A single 10 by 10-foot plot can handle over 100 plants when spaced properly. Allow ears to fully mature and dry on the stalk before harvest. Kernels should be hard, not milky. Once harvested, finish drying indoors until moisture is gone. Then store your dried corn in airtight containers away from heat and light. Properly dried corn can store safely for years. This is one of the oldest staple crops in human history for a reason. It feeds families. At number 8, we have carrots, a root crop that delivers flexibility, storage potential, and steady harvests. Why January? In warmer climates, carrots can be direct seeded outdoors in January for an early spring harvest. In colder areas, this is the month to plan your carrot beds and secure your seed supply, so you're ready as soon as soil becomes workable. Carrots thrive in loose, stone-free soil. Raised beds and deep containers work extremely well. Avoid compacted soil, which causes misshapen roots. Carrots are not just a side dish. They are a reliable source of carbohydrates, fiber, and key vitamins, especially vitamin A. When grown at scale, they become a serious contribution to your yearly food plan. How much should you plant? For a family of 4, aim for at least 50 to 100 pounds of carrots per year. That equals roughly 300 to 600 carrots depending on size. The good news is carrots can be succession planted throughout the year to stagger harvests. For storage, late-season carrots are the best. Harvest, remove the greens, and store unwashed carrots in damp sand, peat moss, or sawdust in a cool place. Properly stored carrots can last 4 to 6 months. They're simple, dependable, and incredibly versatile. Carrots belong in every serious food security garden. At number 9, we have cabbage, one of the greatest value crops you can plant. Why January? In zones 7 through 10, you can direct plant or transplant cabbage in January. In colder areas, this is when you start cabbage indoors so seedlings are ready for early spring transplanting. Cabbage is a powerhouse leafy vegetable. A single head can weigh anywhere from 2 to 10 pounds and can feed a family for several meals. It is rich in vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and fiber. Beyond fresh eating, cabbage shines because of how well it preserves. How much should you plant? For a family of 4, plant at least 20 to 30 cabbage plants across the season. That gives you a steady flow of fresh heads plus enough surplus for preservation. Cabbage is famous for fermentation. Turn it into sauerkraut or kimchi, and you now have a shelf-stable, probiotic-rich food that lasts a year or more without refrigeration. It can also be blanched and frozen, dehydrated, or stored fresh in a cool cellar. Plant spacing should be 18 to 24 inches per plant, and cabbage loves rich soil and consistent moisture. Protect young plants from pests like cabbage worms using row covers or organic sprays if needed. This is a true survival vegetable, filling, nutritious, adaptable, and long-lasting. It is exactly the kind of crop that keeps families fed. That wraps up crops 7 through 9 in our January planting series. Dried sweet corn for real calories, carrots for reliable storage and nutrition, and cabbage for both fresh eating and long-term preservation. Welcome back to part 5 of our series on the 20 crops you must plant in January 2026 if you want to feed your family for a full year. In this video, we are covering crops 10 through 12, beets, dried peas, and kale. These crops are incredibly efficient, nutrient-dense, and versatile, making them essential for any serious food security garden. Let's get into it. At number 10, we have beets, one of the most underrated root crops you can grow. Beets are incredibly efficient plants because you get 2 harvests in one. The roots are dense, sweet, and nutritious, and the greens are edible as well, similar to spinach or Swiss chard. That means every square foot you devote to beets delivers maximum value. Why January? In warmer climates, you can direct seed beets outdoors in January. In cooler climates, this is the month to plan and prepare your beet beds so you're ready to plant as soon as the soil becomes workable. Beets prefer cool weather and will thrive in early season conditions. Beets are rich in iron, potassium, antioxidants, and natural sugars that help maintain energy levels. They grow well in raised beds or loose soil, and they do not require a lot of space. How much should you plant? For a family of 4, aim for at least 100 to 200 beet plants per year. That will provide both fresh eating and storage roots to use through the cooler months. Beets also preserve extremely well. You can pickle them, can them, roast and freeze them, or store them fresh in a cool cellar packed in sand or sawdust. The greens can be eaten like leafy vegetables early in the season. Beets are efficient, reliable, and versatile, exactly what you want from a self-reliance crop. At number 11, we have peas grown not just for fresh eating, but intentionally for drying and long-term storage. Most gardeners grow peas to enjoy them fresh in spring, but dried peas are a traditional survival food. Once dried, they store for years and can be used in soups, stews, and as a plant-based protein source. This makes them incredibly valuable in a self-sufficient household. Why January? Because peas prefer cool conditions. In many climates, you can plant peas outdoors in January or February. This gives them a head start before the heat of summer arrives. In colder northern climates, January is the perfect time to map out your plantings so you are ready to sow as early as the soil can be worked. Peas climb, so give them trellises, netting, or fencing. Vertical growing means you save space while increasing yield. As nitrogen-fixing plants, peas also improve your soil by adding natural fertility. How much should you plant? For a family of 4 looking to store dried peas as a real food source, aim for at least 50 to 100 plants. More is always better if you have the space. Allow the pods to fully mature and dry on the vine. Once paper dry, harvest the pods, shell the peas, and finish drying indoors until completely moisture-free. Then store them in airtight containers in a cool, dark place. Dried peas are simple, nutritious, long-lasting, and protein-rich, a perfect preparedness crop. At number 12, we have kale, one of the toughest, longest-lasting leafy greens you can grow. Kale is not just a trendy vegetable. It is a true workhorse crop that can produce food for months on end. In mild climates, kale planted in January will continue producing leaves right through spring, summer, fall, and even winter. In colder regions, it becomes one of the last crops still standing when frost wipes out everything else. Why January? Because kale thrives in cool weather. Planting now gives seedlings time to establish strong roots before hot weather arrives. Kale grown during cooler months is sweeter, tender, and more flavorful. Kale is extremely nutrient-dense. It provides vitamins A, C, and K, along with minerals, antioxidants, and fiber. A few healthy kale plants can supply greens for a family all year long. How much should you plant? For a family of 4, grow at least 10 to 15 kale plants. Harvest leaves continuously, and the plant will keep producing fresh new growth. This is what makes kale so valuable. It is a renewable harvest. Kale can be eaten fresh, sautéed, blended into smoothies, added to soups, or dehydrated into kale chips. It also freezes well, meaning nothing goes to waste. If you want dependable, low-maintenance nutrition, kale should absolutely be in your garden plan. That brings us to the end of part 5 of our series. We covered 3 incredibly powerful crops today: beets for dual-purpose harvests, dried peas for long-term protein storage, and kale for nearly year-round leafy greens. In the next video, we will continue exploring more essential crops that help build real food security for your household. Remember, the planting you do in January determines how well your pantry will be stocked for the entire year.